Welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast, where we explore the connection between nutrition, performance, and health for busy, active people. I'm Claire Shorenstein, a sports dietitian and endurance athlete, and in every episode, I share evidence-based guidance, inspiring athlete stories, and practical tips on a wide variety of nutrition topics so that you can feel better, crush your endurance goals, and thrive as a human being. Today, we're continuing my mini podcast series on GLP-1 medications. These drugs are everywhere right now, but the conversation around them is often confusing and lacking in nuance. In this series, I'm talking to 3 dietitians, each with their own unique professional and personal experiences with these meds to explore how they work, who they're designed for, what the science says, how they're being used in the general population, what benefits as well as side effects we're observing, and what active people and especially endurance athletes need to understand about these pharmaceuticals. If you didn't catch the first episode of this series a little while back, I spoke with Courtney Smith, a sports dietitian and diabetes specialist, and I highly recommend you go give it a listen. We introduced all the basics, talked about these drugs from a diabetes angle, and also addressed use in athlete populations. Today's conversation is a very different one. I'm chatting with Summer Kessel, a registered dietitian and certified specialist in obesity and weight management. She's also a published author and busy mom of 2 from Tampa, Florida. She is currently serving as the co-founder and chief of operations at Vineyard, a virtual weight management and cardiometabolic health clinic. She also was a patient on GLP-1 medication, and we spend quite a bit of time talking about her own weight struggles and what her experience has been like on these drugs over the last few years. We cover such a wide range of things within this broad topic, and our conversation really highlighted just how incredibly complicated, nuanced, and at times controversial GLP-1 medications can be. One thing we covered quite a bit more than in other episodes was food noise, what it is, and how GLP-1s can help. I have been going into these conversations with an open mind and found today's chat really interesting. I hope you do as well. Before we dive in, if this show has helped your fueling or an athlete story has entertained or inspired you, I would love your support. You can leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen, share an episode with a friend or on social media. You can support me on Patreon. And of course, you can support the sponsors of this episode, Tailwind and Good Ranchers. You can also find my fueling stickers and affiliate links for some of my favorite products on the shop page at eatforendurance.com. All the links are in the show notes. It means so much. Thank you. All right, here's my chat with registered dietitian Summer Kessel. Summer, welcome to the Eat for Endurance podcast. So stoked to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I would love to hear a little bit about yourself as a dietitian and what types of clients and patients you work with.
Yeah, so I'm a registered dietitian and a certified specialist in obesity and weight management. I typically work in the outpatient setting with folks on GLP-1 medications. And I'm also a patient myself with my own weight loss journey, and I'm on a GLP-1 medication as well. And I like to think that I'm an athlete. I dabble in running, and I'm working on some high rocks races coming up. And I've played sports my whole life. So I'm really grateful I get to combine all of that into my work now with folks on GLP-1 medications. So I primarily work with folks who have just really struggled with their weight for a long time, have complications of obesity. And but what's cool is that population tends to then eventually want to become athletes. And so we get to sprinkle in some of that sports nutrition stuff too, which is just really fun.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about your own story because, it's something you're very vocal about on social media and kind of sharing your whole journey as someone who's been on GLP-1 meds. And maybe, for anyone who's new to you, kind of just take it from the top, like what led you to start, what your experience has been like. Has this influenced your work as a dietitian? I know, maybe the short version. I'm sure we could talk for hours on this.
I literally wrote a whole book about my journey, right? Because it is a long story. It's like a lot of people, I've struggled with my weight since I can remember. Like I am grateful. My parents were super active. My mom was a physical education coach. Like I was in sports. I did all the things. I grew up, middle class and had access to healthy food and had great medical care and all the resources. And my parents, guided me, and we had a pretty healthy life upbringing with food. And despite that, I was just always the bigger girl in all the sports. Like I remember being in dance class as a little girl and like needing a special order for my uniform for the recital because they didn't make it in a size that would match everybody that would fit me. And I figure skated and I played basketball and I was in all the sports, and we live in Florida. I had a very active life. I was just always hungry. I was just an overeater. I just was never satisfied. And then as I became a teenager, and got a car, then I had access to driving my own self to fast food. And then when I went away to college is when I really gained a lot of my weight with the food halls and the alcohol and the freedom to really eat whatever, and no longer really playing sports in those early years in college. And I gained a ton of weight. And at my heaviest, I was about 300 pounds. But even in like high school, even playing basketball, I was like 200, 220. Like I was just always the bigger girl. And
are you tall?
I'm 5'8". I'm not super tall. I wish I were taller. I think I would have had a better basketball career, but I really struggle with food, just being hungry all the time. And I did all the things to try to manage it, right? I did all the diets. I would count the macros. I would get a personal trainer. I would try to run. I would try to, follow whatever was the trend of the time of nutrition. And I was pretty successful actually in losing weight with diet and exercise, quote unquote, being very diligent and very meticulous and working very, very, very hard. I'd lost 100 pounds at one point. And then I got married and got pregnant and had a baby and gained almost all of it back. Then I did it again, lost the weight, diet, exercise. And then I got divorced and then I got remarried and then I had another baby and gained a lot of weight back. And it was just this constant fight to lose weight, to be healthy in a body that I was comfortable in, to do the activities that I enjoyed. And it was knowing that I wanted to be fit and I wanted to be strong and I wanted to feel good, and knowing that I was overeating and just felt like I lacked the ability to control it. It was so frustrating. During that, after the first baby, before the second baby, is when I went back to school to become a dietitian, because I thought like if I could just learn things, I would know how to manage my weight. And even as a dietitian, I remember when I first started working in the inpatient setting as a clinical dietitian, first half of my career, people looking at me and being like, wait, you're the dietitian, but you're big. Like it was such a struggle to be not, at a normal straight size, healthy weight, like not buying plus size clothing. And not necessarily even because of a body image thing or because I didn't like how I looked. And actually, sometimes I look back on pictures like, oh, I did used to have a chest and curves. And like, I felt like I was pretty attractive even at a heavier weight. Like, weight is not the end all be all, but I just felt crummy. Like I just knew I was overeating, and I just knew I was on this trajectory I was either gaining if I wasn't carefully controlling and being intentional with my nutrition. I could easily gain. It wasn't like I was just maintaining at this healthy, higher weight. I was just in a constant fight to not keep gaining more weight. And to control my appetite in some way was just a struggle. At one point I said, F it, I'll just be a big girl power lifter. I'll just take advantage of this size and go pull heavy deadlifts and like just be, just love it and embrace it and eat and fuel that activity. And I did that for a few years and it was fine. I was really strong. But as you get older and, your knees and your hips hurt, and I was getting reflux, and I just knew that I was an overeater. It was the overeating that was the hard part. It was struggling with the food noise and then not feeling like I was in control of my food choices that really drove me crazy.
Yeah. You've mentioned that word overeating like a lot. And, something we talk about all the time on this podcast is like your intake relative to how active you are. Right. And so like what I'm hearing in your story is you were, obviously it varied across your life, but much of your life you were incredibly active. But in your mind, you're saying that you were eating too much relative to how active you are. And then what I'm also hearing is the out of control and the food noise piece, which I know is a huge part of why people go on GLP-1 meds, where they cannot manage that food noise. And food noise being different than, say, someone who's really restricting and then can't control themselves around a food. This is something that's really distinct from that. But yeah, no, I hear that. And actually a follow-up question, were you experiencing like other, like whether it was lab work or other things that were indicating like health was going not in a great way with it? Because it, of course, is not just weight. It's also like what else is happening in your body.
What
right?
else was going on, right? Yeah, for sure. So I definitely, as I was trying really hard to eat well and move and have a healthy lifestyle, and I would even say this to patients in the hospital, like, I care way more about your daily habits than I care about the number on the scale. Like, this is true. I care way more about body composition than I care about BMI. This is true. Even in doing my best, I still felt like I was just powerless to this food noise. It was constant, like eating and food was constantly on my mind. And I was like impulsive with food. Like it would feel like things would call to me for food. And so it was a struggle to maintain at like 220, 200, 220 was like where I would land. And if I wasn't careful, I could see myself easily getting back to 250, 300, like if I just wasn't being intentional. And like you were saying, the more active I was, the hungrier I was. And I was okay with hunger. I could eat, and I would eat 3 wonderful, amazing, healthy, nutritious meals and still feel like if a cookie presented itself between those 2 meals, even being physically full, the food noise would compel me to want to eat that food, which would just be excess calories in addition to what I needed. And I would see the weight trend up. And so that's how I would define overeating, right? Is like it would take huge portions of food to feel full. I had to eat volume meals to feel any sense of satisfaction. It didn't last very long. And I was always had room for dessert, always had room for extras, always could eat. You asked me to eat, I could eat, right? Something was available, I wanted it. And it was really frustrating to just never feel satisfied. So as I was getting older and my blood pressure was trending up at a bunch of repeat visits, I was having this awful GERD and reflux, which actually I had a hiatal hernia that ended up getting repaired, which was tough because then I didn't have the reflux to prevent me from overeating as much. So I could even eat even more. I could just see it trending. There's a history of heart disease in my family. And I think I have had undiagnosed like PCOS. I always had acne and a little bit of a chin hair situation and multi cycles. And so my A1C was starting to trend up and I could just kind of see where that was heading. But regardless of any of the health metrics, I just felt uncomfortable in my body. Like I just felt like I was carrying excess body fat that I didn't need, that wasn't serving me. And it was never a pursuit of like thinness. I'm still not a normal BMI. I'm still quote unquote overweight. I'm very proud of my muscle and like that I don't need to be a normal body weight per BMI, which is a whole other podcast.
Yeah, I was like, can we not like, yeah, like BMI can go in the garbage as far as I'm concerned.
But it's like, I just knew I was capable of eating well and exercising in a way to have this healthy body if I just didn't have to deal with this freaking food noise. And so 3.5, almost 4 years ago now, my colleague and good friend was tweeting, Dr. Spencer was tweeting about GLP-1 medications. And there was one tweet, I'll never forget it. He said, a patient of mine just reported starting a GLP-1 and it felt like relief from food noise. And it was like, that was what I was looking for. I was looking for relief from the food noise because once I had the relief from the food noise, everything else fell into place. Everything else was easy. I knew how to eat. I knew how to move. I knew what healthy portions were. I knew what hunger and fullness was if with regular portions of food. And now I could actually feel it in my body and I could estimate I can pretty much estimate how many calories I need and how many calories I'm eating. I've been doing it in an app and in my brain as a dietitian for all these years. And so now I am able to quote unquote eat intuitively because I actually have hunger and fullness cues that are appropriate for my body and activity level and go out and live my life and say no to the cookie and eat a healthy meal and move on without it being like this obsessive thing that I have to control all the time.
Are you still letting yourself, like, if you want a cookie, you're eating the cookie and
Oh,
you're kind of
100%.
doing, okay, good. I just want to make that differentiation for our listeners. The message is not like, don't eat the cookie.
No, cookies are amazing. I love a chocolate chip cookie. But
Okay, good.
Now I can say, now I have the ability to say that chocolate chip cookie looks like crap and it's not going to be worth it versus this chocolate chip cookie from this place is wonderful and amazing and fresh and gooey and yes, I want it and I'm going to split it with my kid. Whereas before it was like, I don't care that it's stale. I'm going to eat 5 of them.
Sure. If you've been listening for a while, you've probably heard me mention Tailwind Nutrition on the podcast, and I am so excited to announce that they're now an official sponsor of this show. I've been using Tailwind since 2019, back when I was part of their original Trailblazers ambassador team, so this partnership has been years in the making. And one of the things I've always appreciated about them, both as an athlete myself and as a dietitian, is how simple they make sports nutrition. No GI drama mid-run, great taste, and genuinely easy to use no matter what activity you're doing. I've mixed their endurance fuel into water bottles before more long runs than I can count. My personal favorite is the naked flavor, but they have tons of other fun flavors if that's more your speed. It covers carbs, fluid, and electrolyte in one bottle, and I genuinely never get sick of the taste. I'm also a huge fan of their recovery mix because it has 20 grams of protein plus carbs and electrolytes, and it's become my go-to when I finish a trail run and need something quick. I can mix with water right there at the trailhead. No stevia or monk fruit, which I personally do not like, just real sugar to help replenish glycogen fast so you can keep feeling good the rest of the day. As an RD, I appreciate that it's designed around actual recovery physiology and not just around marketing. And lastly, rapid hydration is my go-to for shorter sessions in everyday life, travel days, hot afternoons at the beach with my family, or anytime I want electrolytes without the extra carbs. It's light, it's refreshing, no fuss. If you're looking to make your feeling less complicated, head to tailwindnutrition.com/eat4endurance or use code EAT4Endurance20 for 20% off your first purchase. All right, let's get back to the episode. Yeah, and it's kind of like if, when you think about people, like for me personally, like I have my own past with kind of disordered eating and all that. And back then, again, this is so different from food noise, but I couldn't keep things in my house because then I would just go out of control
100%.
with it. Right. But that was more from a restriction standpoint. And now it's like, I literally have pints of ice cream that I just forget about. And then I'm like, oh, ice cream. Oh yeah, I'm in the mood for that, and then I forget about it. It's like, and so it's one of those things I keep around. But some people, like when you have food noise, it's like that stuff, if it's around, it's gone. Right. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about, like, for people who don't experience food noise, is there anything else you want to say about it? I think you did a pretty good job of talking about it, but it's obviously different than a craving.
It's very different than a craving. Cravings are normal human experiences. It is very normal to see a tasty food that you like and want to eat it. But if you can eat some of it, enjoy it, appreciate it, and then move on, and there's still some left over, and you're full, and that satisfied your craving, then that was a craving. Food noise is relentless, where even after eating the thing that you think you want, then it moves on to something else, and then it's always there. It rules your, what's for dinner? What's for tomorrow? Do I have enough food in the house? Do I have the right food in the house? What am I going to eat? What am I not going to eat? What's the food going to be at the function versus what's the food not going to be at the function? And it's an interesting way to explain it. When people start talking about food noise, a lot of people with any experience, especially I see this all the time in the dietitian space and it drives me crazy, is there's a lot of overlap with disordered eating thought patterns. A lot of overlap. That's very true. It is, however, that the obsession with eating or not eating or what am I going to eat or how am I going to manage comes even without restriction at baseline. And what we see in restrictive disordered eating patterns is the restriction really driving the obsession with overeating or seeking food or wanting. And it's the restriction that drives the increase in desire for these foods, right? Well, people struggling with obesity and food noise are actively gaining weight. They're not in a restrictive place. They're not, they're not sticking to a diet. But yes, sticking to a diet, being in a diet, being in a calorie deficit makes food noise worse. That is true. But to a degree, that is just so much more challenging than the average person trying to lose weight. I don't know that we know enough yet about the overlaps between disordered eating in the restrictive sense and food noise. There's a lot of overlap with people who experience food noise, report binge eating patterns and binge restrict cycles in an effort to lose or manage their weight. We do see a lot of disordered eating in people living with obesity because managing your weight to become a healthy body weight, to change your body weight is so damn difficult with traditional methods. Even doing it the quote unquote right way or healthy way doesn't necessarily result in weight loss for a lot of people. And we resort to these not so healthy behaviors in an effort to manage our weight because society tells us, like, you better do that or you're going to be sick. And so I don't think that the disordered eating space has accepted into the possibility that GLP-1 medications might actually help people with eating disorders. And I wish they would kind of open their brain to this idea that with GLP-1s on board, with a GLP-1 on board, the patient, me, the client, no longer has to resort to disordered eating behaviors to then eat nutritiously, manage their weight, and engage in healthy behaviors. With the noise gone, with the noise not gone, quieted, we're then able to more logically and practically apply healthy behavior change skills, to learn good nutrition, to implement a plan and follow it, to course correct without over restricting or over binging. There's more of this like middle road, steady routine habit that can get built. With a GLP-1 on board, like for me, for the first time in my life, I actually could look at a hunger and fullness scale and be like, oh yeah, it is a scale. There is nuance in the middle. When you're living with food noise or you're living in binge restrict mode or you're an overeater, you pretty much only know starving or stuffed. It's very hard in the moment to stop and be like, am I a 4 or am I 5? Right? With the GLP-1 medication on board, folks are then able to do that work and able to maybe apply intuitive eating practices and still lose weight, which I know is controversial, right? The intuitive eating dietitians are over here screaming like, but intuitive eating is not for weight loss. Yes, we know. But intuitive eating skills are helpful for long-term healthy behaviors. And this person has the chronic disease of obesity and desires to reduce their excess body fat. Why can't they do both at the same time? And it's a very cool intersection of really, we're getting the clinical outcomes of reduced body fat and reduced weight to improve this person's quality of life and comfort and confidence and health and body image and all the things that they desire, that they have autonomy to work towards, right? And working on the mental health, the relationship with food, the relationship with body simultaneously. And it's no longer either or.
Yeah.
Where people used to, okay, I'm going to go work on all this intuitive eating stuff and mental health stuff and relationship with food and relationship with my body, probably gain weight during that process. And then when I'm healed, whatever that means, then I'll be able to work on my health and my weight and my nutrition and reduce calories and lose the weight. Really? Like, that's not realistic. Like, we don't see that play out in the real world or in the data that ever comes to fruition. It would be nice if folks could do that, but it's just not realistic. And so now the GLP-1s have given us a tool that allows people to achieve their weight loss and clinical health goals, while hopefully, if applied correctly, and that's part of the problem, is if with the right support and the right tools, with dietitians, with people who can guide them, do that cool work too, and really get the best of both worlds. I think part of the reason GLP-1 medications have become so controversial, even amongst dietitians, is there are a lot of people out there using them without support.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm trying to, that's what my platform's been about, my books, my clinic. Like, we want to support people. There are dietitians and doctors who really can help you guide folks to do this well and in a super healthy way and have a great experience on these medications and have all these benefits. But I think sometimes folks are accessing these medications inappropriately, not under good physician support. They don't have resources. They don't have dietitians. And they're starting the journey, like a lot of people in the world, I can't blame them, in a pursuit of thinness. And so the intention sometimes really can make a difference of like what pathway you're going to go on your GLP-1 journey. If your goal is weight loss at all costs, you'll get weight loss at all costs and you'll feel like crap. And then that's where the fear of disordered approaches comes from, right? But if your goal is to be realistic and maintain good, healthy habits and maintain physical fitness, and you have a health approach, you can still want to lose weight and fit in a certain size clothing and like have aesthetic goals. Like, I love that for people. But like having a more realistic and sustainable approach on a GLP-1 medication is the goal, is the intended use case.
Yeah.
And I just think that diet culture has gotten a hold of them, and people are like, great, like just, snatching at the opportunity, and may not be appropriate for them.
Yeah. Oh my God. There's so much to unpack. I don't even know where to begin. This is great. You gave so much really awesome information. And this really highlights exactly why I wanted to do this podcast series. And when I threw out this question in the sports nutrition group and a bunch of dietitians responded, it was so funny. It's like, someone was like, you got to interview Summer. And then a bunch of other people kind of, offered themselves up. And I'm like, you know what? This is such a controversial and divisive kind of topic, but also so complicated, so nuanced. I fully admit I have limited knowledge on GLP-1 meds and experience, which is exactly why I'm bringing on people who have experience, personally, professionally. Like, this is why. And it's fascinating. I find all of this fascinating. And it's everyone has very different opinions on it. And it's really interesting especially hearing from someone who has been going through all of this. Like, for me, I don't experience food noise. So I don't know what it's like for you and your body going through all of this. And you clearly have had this struggle with all of this. And this, as you said, has provided relief. And that's awesome. And so there's so much to kind of, I'm like, where do I want to go next?
Well, I was going to say, I compare the GLP-1 experience a lot to being a person who's like predisposed to depression and anxiety. You're going to therapy and you are reading the self-help books and you are building a supportive community and you're talking about your feelings with your therapist, but you just can't shake the dark cloud of anxiety and depression. So you start a medication. And now with the medication on board, you are more likely to want to exercise and more likely to want to take care of yourself and more engaged in community, and you have a better life. That is the way that these medications work on the biological level for people who struggle with obesity. And there's a misconception that the only thing that these medications do is just starve people. They just make it impossible to eat. And that's not how they work. They can be overused and overdosed, and people can be inappropriately at a dose that is so high for them that they can't eat. But again, that goes back to just a poor application of the tool from its intended use. And that doesn't mean that everyone's use is problematic, because a few bad apples have kind of taken it the wrong way. And it's frustrating in the dietitian spaces. I kind of have a reputation in some of these groups. People will post in the dietitian groups. It drives me crazy. People will post that they have this client and they're struggling with weight loss and they've done X, Y, Z, this, that, and the other. And what should we do? How could, what's going on? And my comments always just like, Zepbound, just GLP-1. Like, why do we make people work so damn hard towards their health and weight loss goals and do all of these tools and resources and systems and strategies and education and all of these things if we could offer up this option of GLP-1 medications that could make it easier for them to do all of these things? It's very interesting the way that the weight loss approach for a lot of dietitians, or the just good nutrition, even not weight loss, just nutrition approaches, right? can get so complicated and so in the weeds and so nitty gritty. And you have people who obsess over exactly how much fiber of what type and omega-3s and, and then in the weight management space, you get people really obsessed with calories and portion sizes and exact timing of meals and all of these things. And the GLP-1 medications just make it where I teach the plate method. I'm like, here's 3 square meals a day. Have a good time. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. Make sure there's some protein, fiber, fruit, veg. Have a nice day. Like it doesn't, like we can make that work at a restaurant. We can make that work in the grocery store. We can cook everything from scratch. We can use convenience foods, but like it really simplifies what actually works for nutrition. And it's those boring basics that we all know should work. But in the real world with our obesogenic environment and tasty foods everywhere and stressors and, inequities and just struggles that people have implementing those boring basics, a GLP-1 medication just makes it so much easier.
Yeah. So I want to this has all been so awesome. I want to, and there's a lot of interesting stuff thrown out there that I know people are going to listen to and be like, oh my God, that's so controversial. Like what you said about like the disordered eating stuff. Like I know people feel very strongly about like GLP-1s should never be used with that. But like, there's a lot of, I think sometimes when people forget that, yeah. And there's also like a lot of things very, very tangled up, so it's like people who are overweight or obese who might be like yo-yo dieting and restrict binge and all the sorts of stuff like versus someone we know that eating disorders and disordered eating comes in all body shapes and sizes and whatnot. So yeah, it's really tricky, and this is not, I will be very clear. This is not really my area of expertise. I don't work in obesity and weight management. This is absolutely not, which is why I'm bringing you on and other people on. But maybe it would help to talk about like who are these medications really intended for? Like, what would you consider a quote appropriate clinical use? Where is it very much appropriate? Who are they intended for? What are the benefits? Aside from the weight loss, what are we looking for? And aside from like kind of quieting the food noise, maybe we can just talk through that.
Yeah. Okay. So from a clinical perspective, from the prescribing criteria, now, of course, I'm not a prescriber, right? And there is variation amongst prescribers and opinion there. And it's getting messy because the hard BMI cutoffs are lower and lower and lower. So we're not just using BMI anymore, which I appreciate, which people are like, makes people nervous. But in my opinion and my experience, the best use cases for people on for GLP-1 medications are people with excess body fat or a body composition that is holding excess adipose tissue.
How do you define that though? Because I've had clients who are like, absolutely not. You know what I mean?
So ideally, a proxy for that is BMI. So BMI greater than 27 with a comorbidity or BMI greater than 30. Odds are that person has a body fat percentage in the 35, 40, 45% range, right?
So we're not talking about little love handle here, guys. Okay.
Yeah. We're talking excess body adipose tissue, especially if it's in the belly. Mm-hmm. In the front part of the belly or around the organs. And especially if somebody has rising A1C, hypertension, high cholesterol, a metabolic disease related to that excess body fat. That's a kind of a given. Yes, absolutely. Let's get these folks GLP-1 medications. There's weight to lose, that is fat, and they have a complication from this already. Then I think that there's room for preventative care in this. If we have excess body fat, and this is where it gets controversial, but it's not controversial. The science is clear that excess adipose tissue, it's a metabolically active organ, eventually results in metabolic disease that is more measurable, like cholesterol, hypertension, heart disease, fatty liver, diabetes, prediabetes, these sort of things, which do have like downstream complications, right? So in a preventative way, you have a person, maybe they're young, but they just have this excess body fat and a higher BMI. And I think a great way to put it is there is weight to lose that is significant in the teens and 20% is like they have 20% of their weight to lose that is predominantly excess body fat, then that would be totally appropriate. Now, if this person only wants to lose 5 to 10 pounds and they think that that's from excess body fat, like that's not what we're talking about here. Like we're really talking about 20, 30, 40 pounds of excess body fat to lose.
It's not just weight, body fat.
Not just weight, but body fat, right? Because some percentage of weight loss may or may not be muscle. We can talk about like ways to mitigate that. There's a lot of fear mongering around GLP-1s that all you're going to do is lose your muscle. You will lose muscle if you are in a smaller body and you don't have body fat to lose. You will lose a lot of muscle, and that will not be good for you in the long term or your health. You will become frail. You will be more insulin resistant. You won't feel strong. You won't have the look that you're going for if we lose muscle. So yeah, there's risks, a lot of risks to using these medications if you don't have the body fat to lose. That being said, the intended use case for these medications is weight loss, like significant weight loss, like the treatment of obesity. I would not be surprised if in the next 5 to 10 years, there are more and more and more indications for lower doses for a wide variety of non-weight related issues where the person may or may not have weight to lose, but is on such a small dose that the nutrition is not significantly restricted, but they reap the benefits.
One thing that comes up constantly on this podcast, whether we're talking about performance, recovery, or just making everyday nutrition work in real life, is how much easier it is to fuel well when you actually have good food on hand ready to go. That's why I'm so excited to partner with Good Ranchers, a delivery service for high-quality chicken, beef, pork, and fish, all sourced from American farms and ranches. Having quality proteins stocked in the freezer has been a game changer during busy training weeks and hectic family life for me. Everything arrives vacuum sealed and pre-portioned, so it's easy to pull out exactly what you need, whether you're cooking for yourself after a long training session, having friends over, or feeding the whole family. I love having a variety of proteins on hand so meals never feel repetitive, and I was honestly so excited when my first box arrived that it finally pushed me to get that second freezer I'd been wanting for years. You can choose a curated box, which is what I did, or you can build your own with exactly what your household needs. Use code IRON, IRON, and you'll get $40 off your first one-time order, or if you choose a subscription, that code will get you $100 off across your first 3 orders. And as a bonus, whichever one you choose, you'll get a free protein of your choice with every order. I tried the chicken nuggets, which are made with actual chunks of chicken breast. They were so good, and I am not normally a chicken nugget person, and they were a total lifesaver on more than one occasion when I needed a quick option for lunch. One last thing, and this is important, after checkout, there's a short survey. Please write in Eat for Endurance when Good Ranchers asks how you heard about them. That's how you help support the show. All right, head to goodranchers.com, use code IRON, and let me know what you try. Let's get back to the episode. Yeah, can we talk about dosing for a minute? Actually, that's definitely an area I want to talk about. And I covered this a little bit in the first episode. And I know we haven't even talked about like the different medications, and we can touch on that if you want. But yeah, dosages, because there's like, people are like, some people come to me, they're like on a low dose, some people are on kind of higher dose, there's microdosing. Can you just kind of explain that whole landscape so people understand?
I mean, the landscape is very marketing driven. Okay. And sales driven and trend driven, and not necessarily like clinically validated, like vocabulary around what is a microdose versus what is a low dose versus what is a high dose. Like that is not like you're not going to find that in a paper from Obesity Medicine Association talking about microdosing. Like microdosing is not a defined term at this point. I think in the future it might be. Dosing is just dosing, right? And the medications come in a variety of doses, starting on a low end, with the expectation that the average person with obesity taking these medications will need to slowly ramp up their medication dose to a higher, more effective treatment dose to get full effect. So people with obesity on Wegovy, for example, it used to only go up to 2.4 milligrams. We would have people not lose weight until they got to that 2.4, right? Because it wasn't strong enough yet. They weren't on a therapeutic dose. See the same thing with Zepbound. People be like, 2.5 didn't do nothing, 5 didn't do nothing, 7.5 kind of helped. But when I finally got to the 10, then I started seeing the 2 pounds per week weight loss that I was really hoping to get. That's like how these medications were designed. Like we didn't see significant weight loss for people with obesity until they got to the higher doses. Well, people without obesity probably don't need those higher doses because they're in smaller bodies. And so there are people without obesity who will take a little tiny dose and get a significant effect because they're in a smaller body. And then the world realized that there's a market for people who want a small effect from a small dose, because small doses are cheaper, which we could talk about all the inequities there with healthcare costs and how the bigger people who need the bigger doses have to pay more money than the smaller people who take the micro dose who don't even need the medication. That's the whole thing. So the micro dosing, the way I kind of, when somebody says they're on a micro dose, I think they're either on the lowest possible like commercially available dose or less. So they're getting like a Zepbound 2.5 vial and they're using half a vial once a week. And they feel like it helps them with their cravings, inflammation, and they were able to lose a few pounds and they feel leaner. Or it helps with their PCOS symptoms, or it helps with their energy, or it helps with, we're seeing all of these things that folks feel like it helps with their perimenopausal symptoms, those sort of things.
Are you seeing doctors prescribe that, or is that where people are doing all that shady like online shit where they're like getting it from God knows where?
A little bit of both. I mean, and then because we will have folks too where it also depends on like your response to treatment. So I have patients with obesity who are hyper responders to 2.5 and they never even need to increase their dose and they lose their 100 pounds on the low dose the whole time. So like there's a lot of variation into the way people respond to certain doses. Yeah. And I think what's dangerous though is that in the beginning of starting a GLP-1 and the reason why we titrate up slowly is it hits you hard when you first start. Like the first baby dose usually does like take a few weeks to get used to, and you're going to have some nausea and you're going to not feel great. And you are maybe going to struggle to eat enough in the beginning until you kind of get your bearings and figure out what you can tolerate and like get good support and you get used to the medicine. Well, if you're a person with 100 pounds to lose, 2 weeks of nausea and not eating enough is, you might lose 5 pounds. Cool. Like you had 100 pounds to lose. But if you don't have weight to lose, 2 weeks of nausea and feeling like crap and barely eating can be a malnutrition.
That's malnutrition. I was about to say like the risk of malnutrition. And that's like a whole thing I want to get into as well, is just because like rapid weight loss is not good for you. And especially if you're trying not to lose all your muscle and impact bone health and do all the things, like this is what we learned as dietitians. It's malnutrition.
Yeah. So it really is the intended application of the person using these medications. I'm not here to like discredit anybody's lived experience or say that like you guys don't, like everybody has autonomy to do what they want with their body, right? We could extrapolate this to like men have been shooting steroids in their butts in the gym for like 30 years, right? And now a bunch of women finally get access to a medication that helps them manage their weight better, and it's all controversial. So I think that, everybody has autonomy. It's just knowing the risks versus benefits when you choose to engage in off-label use of a medication. Where are you getting it from? Where are you getting your information from? Who's supporting you? Are you being realistic and safe and taking care of your nutrition and your muscle and your bones? Are you thinking long-term? How is this going to affect my health in the next 5 to 10 years versus I'm just trying to lose weight for the beach this summer? And then that goes back to this messy space where it really intersects with this eating disorder, diet culture world is, are we in the pursuit of thinness and aesthetics only? And are we doing that? Are we achieving that in a healthy way? Is that a healthy thing to do? Is that a disordered way of eating? Is that a disordered desire? Or are you going into it clear-headed and you're ready to take the risk and you want to see if you can get abs? Like, who am I to say that that's like not your choice? But it's not the intended use of these medications. And when you think about taking any medication, it's always a risk versus benefit. There's always going to be side effects of any medication.
Yeah, let's talk about the risks. Actually, I want to go through that,
because when you look at the risk versus benefits of these medications, we the benefit of 100-pound weight loss for a person with metabolic disease and obesity far outweighs the small risk of a week of nausea or a gallbladder attack or a gallstone. We'll deal with the gallstone. You'll be uncomfortable and have some pain. But if you ultimately manage your obesity and you're in a much healthier body and you have an improved quality of life and you've, eliminated your diabetes, that benefit way outweighed that risk of that gallstone that was like a discomfort for a couple weeks, right? Versus if you're a small person and you take this medication and you get pancreatitis and you're hospitalized and it's a $20,000 hospital bill because you spent 5 days in the hospital with pancreatitis and you weren't able to eat and now you have malnutrition, for what benefit? Like, what was the trade-off there? And so that is where it, when we talk about side effects or poor outcomes that we can expect or might see, it's very rare. A lot of these are very rare. It's important to keep that context. It's compared to the benefit of, right? Or the risk of living with obesity again for the next 20 years. What's the risk of that compared to the risks of these potential side effects is the comparison. So there's the typical GI side effects, the nausea, vomiting, GI upset. We see that usually only in the beginning or when increasing your dose. It is usually very easily mitigated with nutrition strategies.
And we're going to talk through that in a little bit.
Yep. And it's easy to, and with good physician oversight, right? Dosing adjustments, nutrition adjustments, hydration, some of those basics. And a lot of folks will recognize just on their own that those GI side effects were diet induced. So you've started this new medication and you still went out and had a slice of pizza and you're like, yep, pizza is not a food that's going to serve me well on this medication. And people kind of figure out what tolerates and what doesn't. And ultimately those side effects get better. The more scary kind of things to think about are the gallbladder and pancreatitis, which we see anyways in people with obesity and just the general population. So it's hard to say whether it's actually tied to the GLP-1 use. But if you're a person with a history of pancreatitis or a history of gallstones or a history of you've been told you should get your gallbladder taken out, you never really got around to it, and now you start this GLP-1 medication, there's a potential there to have some complications. But we see gallbladders have to come out after bariatric surgery and after weight loss anyways. Losing weight slow and steady helps prevent some of that. Eating enough helps prevent some of that. Staying hydrated, those sort of things. We do see in elderly populations, we have to be more careful about dehydration, especially if they're having nausea, vomiting, or diarrhea. We want to make sure
are elderly people taking GLP-1s?
Yeah, they're about to get approved by Medicare. Yeah.
What? Wait, what do you define as elderly? Like how old?
I mean,
70s and up?
70, 80. I've got patients who are in their 80s.
Who are obese and they need to take...
Who have obesity and diabetes and got started on Ozempic. And
wow, okay.
Yeah. I have a friend who works in a dialysis center and has a gentleman on dialysis on Ozempic. These medications are out there and lots of different folks are on them. Yeah, they're actually about to get approved by Medicare and be more accessible to the elderly, which will be an interesting journey.
What are you seeing most often in practice when it comes to those risks and kind of the, aside from when you're first starting something and they have the kind of the nausea and all that stuff, what are the big challenges? And then we can kind of segue into the things you're saying over and over to your clients about how we mitigate those things.
Yeah. I see the main reason people will book a nutrition visit with me while they're on a GLP-1 medication are fatigue, feeling kind of meh, run down, crummy. They want to start going to the gym. They just don't have the energy because they're just not eating enough. And we've got to strategize ways to make sure we're eating enough. Usually we're adding carbs.
Yeah.
Eat more carbs tends to be my number one recommendation. And
Me
then
too.
I do a handful. Yeah, same, right? And then I do have a handful of folks who will meet with me because they're not losing any weight and they don't feel like it's working and they're struggling still. And we've got to go in and do the whole, any old dietitian would, of the whole assessment and diet recall. And okay, we got to add some steps and we got to pull back on the Starbucks and we got to adjust some things. And work together and we'll figure it out. So those are the two main things, are people who feel crummy, like usually low energy fatigue and feeling weak and tired, or people who aren't losing weight and want to lose weight and are frustrated. Every once in a while, I'll get a good handful of folks who are very motivated to do their sport and trying to figure out how to continue doing their sport while losing weight, while fueling appropriately for their sport, which is a really cool section of population to work with. I'm going to be at the Fuel to Play
Yep, we were just talking about that offline. Yep.
Yeah, we're going to do a case study. I have a client who's volunteered to be a part of this presentation, and she did the Four Corners Ultra, the 4 half marathons, 4 corners in 4 days on GLP-1 medication. And so it's definitely possible to stay an athlete and be an athlete and to achieve these things while on medication. But it takes some intentionality, just like with anybody else, just like any other population would as an athlete need to fuel a specific way.
And that's another really, I'm just that's another very controversial thing that, just throwing it out there. There will be lots of people who disagree with that. And I'm kind of like, I'm at this point where I'm kind of not sure how I feel about all the things, and I'm just kind of learning and hearing everyone's thoughts and experiences. And certainly, especially from my fellow dietitians and talking to different coaches and what they're seeing and just information gathering. And I have my own biases as a sports dietitian and just what I see. And I will say that and I've said this in the other one, like I'm usually quite concerned, like, especially if an endurance athlete is on a GLP-1 bed, because already my people who are not on GLP-1 meds, no one is eating enough to support what they're doing. So like, I definitely have that bias, but like, again, I'm just, there will always be people who can achieve certain things in a healthy way. And then it's just kind of like, is this something that's recommended for endurance athletes? I personally would say like, probably not, but just based on the population I see, but I'm sure there are people out there who can do it in a, I don't know. Again, nuance. We have to embrace the nuance of all this.
If an endurance athlete has obesity and has excess body fat and struggles with overeating, and being on a GLP-1 now puts them on a level playing field where they're no longer eating in excess and they're able to eat to their needs, then they're just like a regular person now.
Sure.
Right? And that's how I feel. I feel like I'm able to be the athlete I've always wanted to be. I'm stronger than ever and more muscle than ever because now my overeating doesn't get in the way of my sport. And so I think that that's a perfectly normal application. And again, it goes back to, are we eating enough on these GLP-1 medications? This is my number one question. What do I say over and over again? What are you eating? What's a normal day like? Tell me the foods you should be eating. 3 meals a day. Maybe some snacks if you feel like you need to. If you're losing weight too quickly, we're going to add a snack. If you're not able to eat big enough portions, we're going to add a protein shake. If you are overly full for a long time and you just really can't eat, we're calling your doctor and we're reducing the dose.
I think that's the big one. That's really the big one. And my concern is that, well, there are two things. There's like the appetite piece, because of course it suppresses appetite and the food noise. So people are just suddenly going from thinking about food all the time to being like, oh yeah, I'll just eat once and I'm good. And that just points to like, I have to highlight, you did like basically alluded to this multiple times. You cannot use a GLP-1 med as a standalone treatment. You have to get support. Like you can't, it's not just like a set it and forget it situation. You really have to make sure you're taking all of the other necessary steps to protect yourself. And, like, so if your relationship with food is crap, like you need to work on that. If your eating habits are poor, like you need to improve those things. So yeah. So I think some people, when we talk about abuse, or it's just like, they just want that quick fix, that shortcut. And it's like, no, you can't use it in that way. That's not going to be the most effective or the safest or whatever for your body. But like I've had a athlete, for instance, who came to me, like I've worked with a few people who are on GLP-1s, but not that many. And I had someone coming to me who was getting into running and was about to run his first marathon. And I think he was on, I forget if he was on Zepbound or for which one it was a while ago. But like he already had he wasn't eating enough to begin with. And he had terrible eating habits. He was never hungry. It was like a battle getting him to eat anything. And so this is where, again, we just have to be really, really careful with that stuff. Before we keep going, I want to speak to something I know a lot of you are dealing with. If you're training consistently and trying to stay on top of your nutrition, but it still feels really hard or confusing, you're not alone. Many of the athletes I work with are motivated and doing their best while juggling a lot. These athletes don't need more nutrition rules or more discipline. They need guidance that's realistic, flexible, and supportive. That's why I created Eat for Endurance. On my website, you'll find free nutrition downloads, tons of detailed blogs, low-cost mini guides and masterclasses, and my monthly membership, Fuel for Life Crew. For just $39 a month, you can ask me your questions in our private Slack community, drop into my monthly live office hours to essentially get a mini one-to-one session, and connect with other busy, active people navigating similar challenges. And if you're looking for a much more individualized and a higher level of support, I also offer 3 and 6 month one-to-one nutrition coaching programs with limited spots available. You can explore everything over at eatforendurance.com. All right, let's get back to the episode. So like with the appetite piece, how do you work with people who are really struggling to eat enough? Mm-hmm. Like they just don't have that interest in food, or they're really having a hard time. Yeah. How do you kind of help make sure they are eating enough? Because you can tell them, hey, you need to eat 3 meals plus snacks. You're losing too much weight, or you might develop these nutrition deficiencies. But what if physically they just they struggle?
Yeah. It's a good question. So my favorite question to ask those folks is it a mental block to want to eat, or is it in your gut? So if when you do eat, you feel fine, you're able to eat, it goes down fine, it stays down, you're not sick, you're happy you ate, it was fine, it was delicious, you do eventually get hungry and you're able to eat, then this is a brain thing that we've got to work through. And we're going to set a schedule. We're going to schedule meals and snacks. We're going to stop waiting until we feel like eating. And we're going to make a plan. And it's going to be a little more structured and a little less vague. And we're going to go through and we're going to say, these are our options for breakfast, lunch, dinner. This is the time we're going to eat. We go through your daily schedule, your routine, and we find places to put food or beverage to meet your needs. It's almost always, I don't want to eat, or I don't feel like eating, or nothing sounds good, or everything's turning me off. I don't want to get up and make something. It's not appealing, right? Especially in the beginning, we got to work through that. We kind of got to talk ourselves out of that and say, what do I need? What does my body need? And figure out what can we eat that's like a safe food that's going to be fine. And for a lot of us living with obesity, if you've been a person who's always loved food, and food is amazing and food is tasty, and you've never met a food you didn't like, and you've always eaten on vibes, you've always eaten on what sounds good, what feels good, what do I want? For the first time in your life, you don't have those signals telling you that you want things and you don't want anything. And you're like, what do I do with that? I guess I just won't eat because I don't want anything. Well, if I'm not hungry, I shouldn't eat. But that's not hunger. That's not wanting. And so sometimes the conversation turns to like, what are signs of hunger that we can look out for that aren't, I want food, but like I'm getting crabby, or I'm tired, or I'm reaching for another coffee, or I want to take a nap. Well, maybe you're hungry.
Yeah.
Right? I'm feeling run down. That might be your new hunger signal. And you might not, because of the delayed gastric emptying, you might not get a tummy growl that tells you you're hungry anymore. And if you've always waited for your tummy to tell you you're hungry, first of all, you've always been waiting way too long to eat.
Yeah.
And that might not ever come until it's too late. And then we're never going to be able to eat enough in one meal because you will get fuller sooner. So if we're waiting until we're hungry to eat, you're not going to be able to eat enough to make up for the fact that you haven't been eating all day. It's very hard to meet your protein goals, your carbohydrate goals, your hydration goals if you don't start in the morning and make an effort to eat every few hours. I typically tell people to start with breakfast, lunch, dinner. Sometimes snacking throughout the day takes just enough edge off that then you don't want to eat a full meal. So we want to eat a breakfast, give it time to digest, and get a little bit hungry for lunch would be ideal. Where we have a breakfast, a full and complete breakfast, all the food groups. A protein shake is not a meal. I say that on repeat. I'm going to make a t-shirt. A protein shake is not a meal. Like we need a carb, we need maybe some fruit, we need fuel, and then see how long that holds you over to lunch. And then if around lunchtime, whatever that is for your routine, you're like, yeah, I could eat. Good. We're going to eat. We're going to stop when we're full. You don't have to finish everything, but we need to make an effort to eat throughout the day so that we can guarantee that you're getting enough baseline calories to get enough protein, get enough fiber, to then want to go for a walk and want to go to the gym and want to have a good mood and like get your fruits and veggies in. So it's hard sometimes for folks who have always looked at food as either fun means I'm off plan and boring and horrible means I'm on plan, to kind of figure out like, what do you want? What do you like? And it's not like, if all that sounds good is a turkey sandwich and you're like, but it's deli meat. I'm not supposed to eat deli meat if I'm being healthy. And I'm not supposed to eat bread if I'm being healthy. You need to eat something. Like it's not nutrition unless you eat something. We can work on the type of bread and the type of protein and adding veggies and adding fruit later. But like we got to get in the routine of having meals. I think part of the problem with like just a general population is a lot of people are just running around on vibes when it comes to nutrition and kind of making do with either what's available or what's on the way or the snacks in the break room or whatever's at Starbucks. And it's like, we don't have a plan. And I'm not saying, and I say that and people are immediately like, well, I don't want to track calories. I don't want to have to follow a meal plan. I don't want to meal prep. I'm not saying any of that. I'm
just thinking ahead.
There's a general idea of like, what foods do you have in your house that you could make a breakfast out of?
Yeah.
And what sounds like a breakfast that would meet your needs that you could just stock up on?
Or bringing a snack with you on the go or something like that. It's not just being like, I'll figure it out later. It's having some sort of advanced plan, which is always a challenge for people.
Or we can figure it out later. Do you have a structure in place that helps you figure it out when you need to? I love to teach that. So like, if we know that we're going to eat 3 square meals a day, I need a breakfast, I need a lunch and a dinner, and I'm running around errands and I'm not going to get home in time for like my usual lunch. And, you know, but I know if I skip lunch, that's not good for my training. That's not good for my mood. Then I'm going to overeat at dinner. Then I'm going to get snacky. Then the food noise is going to come back. Like I need to eat lunch. I'm out and about and I need to eat lunch. My mind, this is my framework for me, is where can I get a lean protein, a carbohydrate, and some sort of fruit or vegetable? Where? And a diet soda or a water. Like, where can I make that happen? And it's like, okay, I can pretty much do that anywhere. We can go to Chipotle. We can go to Chick-fil-A. I can go to Starbucks. We can go to Dunkin'. Like we can go to the grocery store and I can find a lean protein, some fruit and veggies, and a carbohydrate source. But that is lunch. Lunch is not a granola bar. Lunch is not just a cheeseburger. It's like, what is a meal? Because that is my framework and that is my plan, is that every day I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner and they have those components. And if it doesn't have those components, then I'm kind of like, I'm missing out on something. Yeah. And if I stick to that, I'm good. And like most people will be able to get enough protein, get enough fiber, meet their vitamin mineral needs with a basic framework like that. It's when we start skipping meals or overthinking it. I don't know about you in the sports world, if you get a lot of like black and white thinking, all or nothing.
Big time. Big time.
Not every meal is going to be perfect. You know, not every meal has to be perfect, but you do need fuel at baseline.
Yeah.
And that's
I want to drill down a little bit more in that because one of the things we're concerned about, and you were saying like there's fear mongering on with like the loss of lean muscle mass, with bone health, nutrition deficiencies. But like anytime you're losing a lot of weight, like that is a concern, obviously. If someone is active, so let's say someone, you know, maybe they don't identify as an athlete, but maybe they are trying to go for walks, they're going to the gym or whatever, obviously that, you know, places even more energy demands, nutrient demands on their body. So like, how are we making sure, like this concept of like eating enough is always really hard for people to grasp just across the board, right? Mm-hmm. So how are we like in the weight loss setting on these drugs? how are you helping people figure that out? Like, are you calculating out protein goals and making sure they're hitting them? And if so, what kind of gram per kilogram are you using? Like, how are you helping them make sure they are getting enough iron, they are getting enough whatever the things that you're doing? Like, what does that look like in your practice?
Really good question. So we start with rate of weight loss. So I want to see no more than 1% of your starting weight per week. So if and that's aggressive. That's a lot. That's like really great. Like
what is that in pounds usually?
So like if a person is 300 pounds to start, that would be no more than 3 pounds a week.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And that's aggressive.
That's a lot.
A lot. And so if we're at 0.5% per week, 1.5, like 1.5 pounds per week as a 300-pound person, at the end of the year, we would have lost 75 pounds. And like, that's pretty amazing and great and like really hard to do. So rate of weight loss is like the first thing I want to look at. Like, you feel like you're not eating enough. Are we losing weight? And if you're wasting away and you're losing weight too quickly, we know clearly you're not eating enough. Like the calories, that's just thermodynamics. The other thing I really care about is how do you feel? How's your energy? How's your mood? How's your sleep? How's your sex drive? How is your motivation to go do? Are you like wanting to be active, or are you feeling crummy and fatigued and run down and you feel like crap? Then you're probably not eating enough or not hydrated, right? They kind of go together. And so I start there and I don't like to calculate really strictly for a lot of people unless they want it. Because it complicates people's approach. People get restricted when they come to numbers.
Yeah.
But I will, at least in my head, in my charting and stuff, I calculate TDEE and estimate in my head. I might not share it with patients.
Total daily energy expenditure for anyone who doesn't know what that is.
I take off 500 calories for weight loss. And then I'm like, all right, the math says this person should eat about 1,500 calories a day to lose 2 pounds a week. Their diet recall to me sounds like 1,100.
Do people really eat that little? 1,500? That sounds so low to me for like a 300-pound person.
Like my shorter, older ladies.
Okay.
They're probably like 200 pounds and shorter.
All right, got it. Okay.
But like TDE might say that their maintenance calories are 3,000 and we're going to aim for 2,500, whatever. And then but their diet recall, I'm like, you're not even close to like your weight loss goals. And like, okay, that in my head, then I'm like, hey, I think we should add a carb here and a protein here and an extra fruit snack there and that sort of thing. And it's very collaborative. It's very like, what foods do you like? Where do you think you might be able to fit in a snack? What time of day are you the most grouchy and tired that you think you might need some more fuel? When do you usually exercise? Can we get a pre and a post? Can we do a beverage around that time to get in some extra calories? Like, that's the strategy. And again, like very collaborative and more just like assuring. I think a lot of my work is just assuring people that they're supposed to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, there must be so much unlearning that has to happen. Because I know even in my work with like all the diet crap and people are so carb phobic. And especially when you get someone who has been struggling to lose weight for much of their life, they've been probably diet cycling all across the map. They probably have such strong beliefs like, oh, I can't eat carbs and I can't eat this and I can't eat that. And so that probably is a huge transition for them to be able to kind of include those things in. So as you were saying, convincing people to eat carbs, like that's what I'm doing all the time.
Yeah, that's my main mission in life is to get people to eat carbs. One of my favorite things to do in our support group at Vineyard in our clinic is I have a weekly support group. And every once in a while, someone will bring it up. Like, I finally started eating carbs and I feel so much better. And I'll be like, show of hands, who did I convince to start eating carbs and still eats them? And everybody will be like, me, I was one of those.
Amazing.
And, it's like, I think so much focus in the GLP-1 community and conversations around this is like protein, muscles and protein and strength training. And like, yeah, but like also carbs. Like I think carbs are sometimes more important than protein because if you don't eat carbs with your protein, you're not even putting that protein to good use. Like we get into the biochemistry there, but it's like you need energy. You're going to break down the protein for carbohydrates unless you eat the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are also going to be the key to settling GI side effects. So if we're constipated or we're nauseous or we're getting reflux, like we need to eat some crackers and some rice and potatoes. Like you need fuel.
And
I
especially if
like
you're
to
active.
especially if you're active. I like to counsel from a very practical point of view. And like, I don't necessarily endorse like being all organic and like not everything has to be home cooked. And
Yeah.
we can absolutely utilize processed foods. Ooh, scary. And convenience foods and like what's going to work for your life that's going to make you feel good, achieve the health goals that you're seeking to achieve, and stick with this when it gets hard.
Yeah.
Because there's the ideal way that like, okay, this is what we should do. And then there's like, life is messy. And when life gets to lifing and work is stressful and your kid is sick and you didn't get to go do groceries, what are you going to do? Are you just say F it and throw it all out? Or are you going to kind of engage in the process and use your skills and your knowledge to like move through this in a healthy way? And that is the work. That is the skill of like the resilience that people are able to build through working with a dietitian and having a plan and navigating life with a support person who can help you take into consideration, okay, when life happens, what might happen to my nutrition and what could I do to figure that out? Yes, I love to eat mostly whole foods and cook most of the time. But if I can't, then what? Right? What are my options? And like getting people to open up their options and explore foods and play with foods and develop new skills is a whole world that I think as dietitians, we're all trying to do no matter what type of patient or person we're working with, athlete, disordered eating, or person with obesity. Like we all got to eat. And like, how do we put together a nutritious meal that we actually like? And that won't break the bank and won't take 2 hours and will make our life better, not harder. And that is where a dietitian really is the key to making that magic happen, because anybody can write a meal plan. Anybody can say, here's your protein goals. But when, you have a religious restriction for a certain type of meat and then eggs are giving you the ick, what are we going to eat to get protein in? And, I have a lot of people on GLP-1s. It's a fun little, not fun. It's not fun for them. They're always kind of upset about it. But a common little side effect, especially in the beginning, is that meat will give people the ick, where they're just like, I'm just not interested in meat. It's like gross. And they become accidentally vegetarian. And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know I liked tofu. I'm like, great, amazing. Like we open our worlds to like more food choices and more recipes and options is a really fun job. And it's, as a dietitian working with people on GLP-1s, it's the first time I've been able to counsel people and work towards our goals and really focus on the nutrition skills and the nutrition without hunger getting in the way. Like people are more consistent, more engaged, they're more successful, they don't fall off the wagon as much, or if they do, it's real easy to course correct. Like I used to have clients, I think back to when I was an outpatient and a dietitian, I would have weight loss clients, right? That you have this great session, you have an hour-long session, they leave super motivated and they maybe do it for a week. And then shit would hit the fan. And because you only see them once a month for an hour, they come back next month and then they haven't done it. You're just still talking about the same shit over and over again because you never actually get to do it consistently. And now we actually make from month to month, we're like, all right, we accomplished that. Now what? Now what? We get to move into more nuances of nutrition and habits and skills and build out that library of options for people. And it's really cool to see the evolution that they make.
Yeah.
But I think that also goes back, like we were just saying in the beginning, like GLP-1 medications are meant to be applied in the context of good physician oversight and nutrition and fitness. Well, nutrition and fitness, I think we should say like, use your dietitian if you can access one. And so I love our system. We have it all comprehensive. It's all in one. Like you're not having to fight insurance to get a dietitian visit.
Yeah.
People can meet with us as many times as they want and they can chat and message us in between visits. So if they do fall off or they do have a hard day and they're struggling, they can message and get support and like feel like they have a team behind them. Sometimes that is the work. more so than like, okay, let me calculate your protein needs for you. Or
Yeah, totally.
To be their person to like support them through this.
So I want to talk next about sustainability of these drugs and any long-term considerations, because I know that, not everyone stays on it. So maybe they get off because of poor tolerance, or maybe they don't have the support that they need. Maybe it's being used inappropriately. Maybe insurance stops covering it and it's incredibly expensive.
That's usually the reason.
Yeah, it's usually the reason. So I'd like to hear about what happens when people stop and what you're really seeing in practice. Any kind of concerns about lack of long-term research, or just like anything regarding kind of the sustainability and long-term of, considerations here.
So the conversation around like long-term unknown risks, right? Like everybody's like, what if in 10 years we find out that it causes this like thing? There's no signal for any of that at this point in the research. We keep getting more and more research that comes out with more and more positive indications and use cases and applications does great things for fatty livers, doing great things for possibly dementia and Alzheimer's, is doing great things for sleep apnea. We see more and more benefits, less strokes, less heart attacks, less death. We see really good outcomes, better kidney health, like all the things. There's not a big signal for any major concern. They just removed the depression warning from the labels. The thyroid thing is controversial, but it's in rats and not in humans. We don't see a signal for any like major thyroid cancer or anything like that. So I'm encouraged by all of that at this point, we're like 10 years into having Ozempic. We are, 4 years into having Mounjaro. If there was this major signal for something that was going to start being super negative, I think we would start seeing it because it's just widespread use. So I think that's my take on that, is that the risk of like big, scary future thing at this point, I think is pretty low.
Is that across the board for all drugs? Are there certain drugs that you are a little bit more cautious with than others? Because we didn't actually talk about the different drugs at all today, but that's fine.
No, with the GLP-1s. Yeah. So that's with like Wegovy and Ozempic are the semaglutide, and Zepbound and tirzepatide. And Mounjaro are the tirzepatide. All positive things, lots of positive indications. And the future pipeline for future GLP-1 medications in this class, there are hundreds of agents being investigated right now in trials. So every pharma company is developing their version of a GLP-1 and putting it through rigorous trials and trying to create the next big best thing. So I think we're going to get more and more medications in this class. We're going to get more oral pills. We're going to get cheaper options. Like I think in 10 years, we're going to laugh at all these podcasts that we make because it might just be like available over the counter. Because it really is changing the game of health and management in so many different areas. Again, like we said in the beginning, you have to weigh that risk, that potential scary risk in 10 years, some unknown thing that might happen, with the very real risk of living with obesity for the next 10 years. We know that increases risk of heart attack, stroke, diabetes, cancers, quality of life issues, mental health issues, discrimination in the workplace, and poor relationship with body, and all of these things that can happen living with obesity for 10 years versus the unknown potential, maybe very rare risk of scary future thing. Now, if you aren't a person living with obesity, with this risk of living with obesity, and you're in a pretty healthy, normal sized body, and you're thinking about taking these medications for a 5 to 10 pound weight loss, that risk to reward ratio is very different. And so that's a conversation to have with your doctor. Is that something you're willing to take that risk for? Potential very rare complication.
Do you see that in your practice? Are you taking those people?
No,
because that falls for me under the inappropriate use category. Like, yes, I know, like you're saying, like everyone can do whatever they want, but also like that's kind of BS in my opinion.
Inappropriate. Yeah. So that's worth like considering, right? And then I think too, with these medications, it's like we want to be mindful of sustainability in terms of cost, but also like recognizing that the weight loss phase is just the first part of of this journey. And people do need to understand and should be counseled when starting these medications that they are intended to be a long-term therapy.
Yeah.
And it is, frankly, in my opinion, criminal that insurance companies are discontinuing access to these medications. There's actually an interesting paper that just came out from the VA because they take really good records and it's very easy to do. They had GLP-1 coverage under TRICARE for their veterans in the VA system. And they had this whole cohort of people who had been started on GLP-1 medications like Ozempic and Wegovy like 2 years ago, 3 years ago at this point. And then had all these awesome health benefits and changes and wonderful things. And then they lost coverage and they lost access and then have since reintroduced their complications and negative health outcomes. And they can show that like stopping the GLP-1s, people regained the weight, cholesterol went back up, blood pressure went back up, sleep apnea came back. Like all of these risk factors that they had treated and managed with discontinuation of the treatment came back. And I think that's reasonable. You think about other medications, you're on an anti-anxiety medication, for example, and it's working really well for you and it's helping you really control your anxiety. And then you stop taking it, you could probably expect to feel anxious again. And I think with any weight, when it comes to weight management, you lose weight in a specific way with a certain diet or a certain lifestyle change or a certain surgery, or like the surgeries are more durable, but you follow a diet, a 16-week meal plan. You follow it, you lose 20 pounds. You stop following that meal plan, you probably will regain the weight that you lost unless you make some really significant lifestyle and habit changes. The thing with GLP-1 medications though, is that even with the best lifestyle habits and skills and tools and resources and support and fitness and all of the things that should theoretically help you keep your weight off once you've lost it. Appetite and the biological drive to eat is a bitch.
So that was going to be my question and you basically answered it, is like, what if someone does all the things quote unquote right? Like they have the dietitian, they learn how to eat really well. They are really active. They're doing all the things. Maybe they get mental health support if that was an issue, like all of the stuff. And then they go off of it. Do we see, and maybe we don't have all the answers, but do we see at least less of an increase? I would expect that there'd be a little bit less of something because they've still done all of that diet and health and lifestyle work. Or have you even seen that in practice?
I see people still really struggle because the food noise comes back. And the appetite comes back. And what used to be a satisfying lunch is no longer a satisfying lunch. And now the portion sizes are creeping a little bigger. And I'm still eating about the same, but you're finishing everything on your plate now when you used to leave a few bites behind when you have the medication. Or you're saying yes more often to the cookie. And the restaurant meals are creeping back in. And it's a creep. It's not an immediate like regain, but like even with like a solid foundation, people struggle to lose weight. And people struggle to maintain that weight loss without GLP-1 medications in the real world without GLP-1s. Weight loss in itself is really hard. Maintaining that weight loss, if they've achieved it, is also really hard. And so discontinuing the medications, it's then going to be really hard. And it's possible, but that is where people might need to implement calorie counting. They might need to implement maybe an older, more traditional oral medication that might help a little bit with appetite. They might need to consider even more strict approach to nutrition and fitness. And then is that the life you want to live? And most people don't want to, and in my opinion, shouldn't have to make weight management their entire personality to keep the weight off. Because there's more interesting things to do in the world than focus your entire life on your weight and your fitness and your nutrition. And the realities of like major weight loss and keeping it off requires that level of like dedication and effort through traditional methods. And it's when people stop engaging in their weight loss community, for example, they'll start regaining weight, or they stop doing all the things that help them lose it. If they fall off that wagon, the weight creeps back on really easily. not only because the habits change or they get unstable, but the biology, the drive to regain weight, like our bodies are fighting back to regain that weight, and appetite's going to come back with a vengeance. And it's why the GLP-1s are so effective for major weight loss, because they dampen that natural increase in appetite that you see with weight loss. They mask it. And so you're able to do the whole weight loss journey without having the appetite fighting you back, which is lovely and a great experience. And people are able to eat intuitively the whole way and never count a calorie and still lose the weight. But then if we stop that medication, the appetite comes back. How are we going to induce calorie control to stay at maintenance if we're fighting against that appetite? It's really tough. It's not impossible, but it's really tough. I have a theory that people who have always struggled with their weight and have lifelong childhood obesity, really always struggle to lose weight, have been living with obesity for many, many, many years, probably do need to assume that their GLP-1 medication should be lifelong, or some version of obesity therapy and treatment and intensive management lifelong. Now, I think there are subgroups of people who start GLP-1 medications who like never struggled with their weight until they got a new boyfriend and they got a new job and they hurt their knee and they gained 50 pounds. For the first time in their life, they are struggling with their weight. I think those people have a good chance of using a GLP-1 medication to lose the weight, getting back to their baseline healthy weight, and then keeping it off and staying there. I think those folks that like gain weight situationally probably could come off, because they don't have that chronic lifelong disease of obesity. They had like situational weight gain.
Yeah. What do you think about midlife women? I know we have to wrap up for time, but like that's such a tough population. I get a lot of midlife women who are athletes who are struggling with their bodies. And I certainly am not recommending or supporting GLP-1 use in that population. And okay, you're agreeing with me. Good. That's high risk to my mind.
That's body fat to lose, right? Unless they really are struggling with obesity. I think
they're not. Not my people.
And my anecdotal experience is that a lot of people enter midlife having spent the past 20 years in a diet restrict mindset with food, and they're not eating enough and they don't have enough muscle, and they should focus on being athletes before they focus on dieting.
Yep.
And fueling for sport and building muscle and getting strong and body composition and shifting shape more so than the number on the scale.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm a little weary of like everyone with perimenopause getting on a GLP-1 when they don't have weight to lose, because they feel like they've gained a little bit of weight in their abdomen. I think unless you're really struggling with appetite dysregulation, maybe the GLP-1 is definitely not the first step.
Yeah. And then last question, what do you wish more people understood about GLP-1s?
I think that I wish more people understood that there are those of us who advocate for access to GLP-1 medications are not saying that it's for everyone. And that GLP-1 medication, like don't conflate inappropriate GLP-1 use to all GLP-1 use. Because these medications are truly life-saving and life-changing and a blockbuster drug in terms of medicine and health and the future of health management for a wide variety of conditions. And obesity is a chronic disease. Excess adipose tissue is harmful, and there is a role for these medications. And I think it's only going to get better and safer and more prolific. So like they're not going anywhere. So get used to it, but don't conflate the inappropriate use that you might see online or the horror stories or the one client that came to you that's in a disordered mindset trying to be super, super thin. Don't conflate that to people who have lived with obesity for 30 years and are sharing their lived experience and are seeing benefit and really, I think, are the reason why these medications were created in the first place. And I wish more dietitians and fitness professionals would accept that like all GLP-1 users are not the same, and we're not all in a pursuit of thinness and at all costs, right? And some people really are fighting for their lives and have been fighting for their lives, doing the diet and nutrition their whole lives the right way and struggling and finally have found something that's working for them. Don't shit on it.
Well, that's a perfect place to stop. Summer, this was such a fantastic conversation. Thank you. Yeah, hearts back up at you. Really appreciate your perspectives. I'm sure this one will bring up all kinds of thoughts and feelings in listeners, but that's what this podcast is for. That's what the series is for. I wish we could spend more time. I really wanted to get into your ultra athlete, but you'll be presenting that at the conference. And my next episode and that last episode in the series will be with an endurance athlete who is herself on a GLP-1. So that will be a really interesting conversation. We'll get more into athlete stuff. So thank you. Where can everyone find you online, or if they want to work with you or learn more and follow all that good stuff?
Yeah, I'm at Summer the Dietitian on Instagram and TikTok. And my clinic is joinvineyard.com. If you want care, if you're struggling with your weight and living with obesity and want to have a team to support you or see if you're right for medications, come find us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Summer. Have a good one. And that's our show for today. Remember, this is the second episode in my 3-episode GLP-1 series, so make sure you go check out my first episode with Courtney Smith and stay tuned for my 3rd episode with another dietitian where we focus entirely on GLP-1 use in athletes. That will be coming out in early July. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, I would be so grateful for your support. Please share it with a friend or on social media and leave a 5-star rating and review so more listeners can find my show. And of course, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. You can also shop using my affiliate codes on the shop page of eatforendurance.com. You can visit my Patreon page, and you can check out my sponsors, Good Ranchers and Tailwind. Everything is linked to you in the show notes. And finally, I always love hearing from you, whether it's feedback, topic requests, or just to say hi. You can shoot me an email anytime, claire@eatforendurance.com. I read every email I get, and I always respond, so feel free to reach out whenever you want. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you all next time.